everyone, so this is my part 2 for book recommendations based off of astrological signs. So we're going to start with Leos first. So for Leos, I wanted to recommend a few books that are really passionate and that have a lot of intensity to them, since that's what Leos are known for, and I hope these suggestions will fit. Well, so far actually for Leos, I recommended this book just casually on Instagram, and I got a few messages back, and they were saying that actually that this was spot on, so I'm hoping this works out for other Leos as well. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Girls by Emma Cline. This is one of actually my favorite books as well. When I read this for the first time, I was completely engrossed in this story. It was incredible. So The Girls, this is a story that basically, I don't want to go into too much detail and ruin the story, but it's about your teenage years when you're kind of lost and you're just looking for something to be a part of, a group or just anything, honestly. And I feel so that's how the book starts off, the main character, that's what she's looking for. And she finds that group, and it just so happens to be, not the kind of group that you should be joining along with. But it turns into, the writing is amazing, so it feels so this book is set in the 60s, so you feel you're right there at that time period. It's really crazy how immersive this writing is. And on top of it, Cline writes again, my favorite type of character, is very flawed, and she really focuses on their character development throughout the entire story, so you're there and super invested in them, all of them. And on top of it, so one thing though, the story isn't very action-packed or anything like that, but the impending sense of doom you feel throughout when you're reading the story is just there with you. So it's still incredibly captivating, even though there's not these huge crazy scenes happening or whatever. But I mean, it's intense. It really is. There's certain scenes that are very graphic, and I feel are kind of hard to read, but it's the story, I think that's why. But other than that, I mean, it's one of my favorites. But I will say this is one of those you're either gonna hate it or you're either gonna love it type of books. There seems to be no in between, but I feel Leos will really appreciate this one. So Leos, The Girls by Emma Cline. Okay, so another book that I'm going to be recommending for Leos is Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. I really, really apologize. So Stay With Me, when I first read it, it's another really passionate, intense read. And so that's why I feel Leos will, again, really connect with this one. Also, the other thing is this story is amazing. I feel I'm going to say this with most of my books. I'm never going to recommend, I was just thinking about this, I'm never going to recommend a book I was meh about. I'm always going to tell you guys about the books that I really, really loved. So Stay With Me is one of them. And it's okay, so the story basically is about the marriage between Akin and Yajidi, and so basically, they are incredibly in love with one another, and it's so sweet and so beautiful. But the story is about their marriage and how just these outside issues that I understand there are issues that are within their marriage, but outside, I guess, forces, right? Begin to pollute their marriage, and all these issues that are coming up because of other people. And it was devastating, honestly, certain scenes and certain moments, and you are going to be completely invested in these two, so from beginning to end, completely there with them. And the story it like talks a lot about, like, you get to learn a lot about Nigerian culture, which I didn't know about, so that was really interesting for me. And overall, this is just like, this is this journey you're gonna take with these two people, because another thing that I really loved about this book was that you get to see the perspective from both Akin and Ujiri. So, the same issues that they're going through. First, you'll see it from Akin's side, and then you'll see it from Ujiri's side, and you'll see how they're dealing with these issues, because everyone, when you're in a relationship, you see things differently from the other person. Even the issues that you're dealing with are the same, but you're reacting to them differently as well. There's not everything you're telling the other person about, So I feel like was really great storytelling, because then there's like certain things like you get to see from their perspective, and I really enjoyed that a lot. And yeah, I feel like this book was intense, so I really think it's an amazing choice, and I feel like a lot of you will really connect with it. And yeah, I feel like Leos, you guys will love this one, so stay with me. Okay, so for Virgos, I'm so sorry. I could only come up with one book suggestion, and even this one was a little bit hard for me because I was trying to think of all the Virgos in my life, and I was like, I can only think of my brother, and I was like, what book would I recommend him? And I just couldn't think of one, so I was like, okay. I just went through Virgo traits and everything, and I was like, okay, so intelligent and analytical for the personality traits that I wanted to hone in on. So I ended up choosing Three Women by Lisa Taddeo, because I feel like this was one of my favorite reads, and I was like, you know what, it is very analytical. And because this is actually a nonfiction read, which I always forget about, because when you read the story, it feels like, like you're reading three separate fiction stories, but it's not. It's actually a nonfiction story, and I mean a nonfiction book. But so I feel like, so in that sense, it is very analytical, and it's intelligent because you get into the minds of these three women, and it's like, and you kind of follow 8 years of their lives, and it's like you get to see like they're three very different women, and just their lives and their problems and issues that they're dealing with. And overall, like, the book is very, very well written, and just very, like, the connection, especially as a woman when you're reading this, you feel it. Even though, like, none of these women, their lives did not reflect mine whatsoever, but the feelings they had, the feelings that they felt, especially living their life, there were certain times that I was like, oh, that's like, I feel like that sometimes, like, it's like very spot on, because, universally, most women do share, certain issues are just universal. So it's just like, that connection will always feel that. And so what I really liked about the Three Women was just how honest it was. It's incredibly honest and frank, especially when it came to talking about sex. And I feel like, well, at least for me, I didn't read a book before Three Women that was so frank and open about it, before it. Now I have, but before Three Women I didn't, and I was just like constantly like always shocked, like, what? Like, this is what she's talking about right now? And but it was very empowering, so I loved it. It made me want to read more of like work like this. So Three Women is, this was actually a really popular book when it came out because of the topic. And I know that a lot of people were like, is it too hyped? Is it, just like blowing up because, it just certain people are talking about it? But no, I honestly highly recommend Three Women. I think it did, just like, it's not all hype. Like, the story is like something that I feel like a lot of people are going to be really interested in. So Three Women for Virgos. I'm so sorry, I only have one recommendation for you, but I will make it up. I promise I'll figure out a second one eventually. So I just need to meet more Virgos, I guess. So that'll, you know, like that's my goal, meet more Virgos. Obviously not during this time, but eventually when we're allowed to go out and do stuff, meet more Virgos. Okay, so 3 women, at least a Taddeo for you guys. Okay, so the next astrological sign I'm going to be talking about is Libras. So the 2 personality traits that I decided to focus was their natural peacemaking and diplomatic personality traits, and also their sense for justice. So I was like, that opened up a whole new genre of books for me, so that was exciting. Because the first one I wanted to talk about is The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner. Was an incredibly well-researched, detailed book that makes you feel like you're actually reading nonfiction, which, you know, like usually is not the case, but Kushner put so much detail into this book, and she did so much research. Like if you read up on it, like it's crazy. Like I love when authors do this, because then you can tell like what she's writing about. She's incredibly passionate about it, and what Kushner writes about is basically like overall the theme is how unjust and how awful our prison system is in America. And you see that in this book, and sometimes it's so hard to read some of the stories, but they're important because, you know, this is happening all the time. And the reason why people see things like, you know, everything is so black and white to everyone, but not to everyone, but to a lot of people, and they don't understand that the reason why people get into situations is because of their circumstances, and not because of the decisions and actions they're making, but because of the position they're in. That's not any fault of their own, but because of, you know, just like privilege. Honestly, it's just privilege. And I feel like the way the Mars Room talks about it is very, very well done, because she just writes the story, and, you know, like she's not putting any of her opinions on it. These are actual, like she's like trying to tell this story very factually. And I feel like that's really important when it comes to like subjects like this, because a lot of people want to twist things around, but you can tell that Kushner didn't, you know, she used all of these facts to back up the story that she wrote. And the Mars Room, you guys, like I swear, like the second you're done with this, you're gonna want to like grab somebody and like talk to them immediately about what you just read. It's very intense to read because the stories are so sad, but like I think that Libras will really appreciate like a story like this being told, especially when it's for such a good cause, to, you know, depict how awful like just our justice system is, and then like how awful our prison system is as well. So The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner for all you Libras out there. So another book that I feel like Libras will really appreciate is The Stranger by Albert Camus. So sorry for pronouncing his name wrong as well. But so The Stranger, you know, it's like a classic. And the reason I want to recommend this for Libras is because it's a very challenging read. And like challenging not because the story is hard to read. It's actually extremely readable. I think I read this like in 2 hours, but it's challenging because of the ideas that Camus presents about just, you know, how we are in the world, about justice, and just like there's so many ideas he presents. And it's such a short book too, which, so it's kind of crazy. Like it is 155 pages, and but the amount of just everything, like just the amount of information he's presented to the reader to think about afterwards, it just sticks with you. I've read this book like 6 times now because it just gets better and better with each reread. And so the reason why I think that Libras will especially appreciate this is just because like it's like especially when Camus like really gets into the conversation about existentialism. I think that's when it like really starts to blow your mind, because then you start to like really think about it and like, okay. Just like, sit there with your thoughts for a long time about that. This is a great, I would say, I buddy read this with somebody. Buddy read, because you're going to have a lot of thoughts after this, and you're going to want to tell somebody about it. So, The Stranger by Albert Camus for all you Libras out there, but buddy read this with somebody, it'll be good. Because then you're going to have a lot to talk about. It'll be good if there's somebody with you and you can just be able to, say all your thoughts out to them. Okay, so the next book I'm going to recommend for Scorpios is Mule Creek by Angie Kim. The reason I chose this book for Scorpios is because I feel like this will feed their observational nature, because this book is a courtroom crime drama, and I have never read, actually, before Miracle Creek, I've never read a courtroom crime drama before, so I wasn't sure what to expect. I was like, is this going to be really boring? Is this going to be just about this case and that's it? Nothing else is going to happen? But I just went in and I was hoping for the best, and honestly, I was blown away. This was an exceptional read, so good. I did not expect most of what happened in the book, honestly. And it's not, I wouldn't consider it a thriller, but it is there's a mystery around it, which you're very interested in. But overall, what makes you really into the story is the characters. So each chapter, there's several different characters that the writer talks about, and so each chapter you basically are in the thoughts and you're basically in the mind of this character, right? So you can you delve really deeply into their thoughts and all that. And I was expecting myself to get lost because there's so many different characters, but Kim writes the characters so distinctly. You can't. It's so hard to. I've had books where I'm reading just 3 different characters and I will get lost. Who am I reading about again? But with this one, you just can't. It's so hard to. They're so different, each one of them. And it's the story is really good. I honestly did not expect most of it. I love when books do this, especially when there's this mystery going around, because sometimes when there's this twist or this, this book is setting you up for this thing to happen, you're just waiting for it. Sometimes you don't even really pay attention to the characters and stuff whatever. They're on the back end. I'm just here for this twist. But what Miracle Creek does, which I think all great books that are in the mystery/thriller genre, the great ones do, is where you're just so completely in the story that you're just you're just following along. You're literally just when I went from chapter to chapter, I was just in these characters' minds and there with them and feeling everything they were feeling. And Miracle Creek is really, really good for anybody who loves, character development and just really, really well written characters, especially on top of it. And I think obviously if you're going to do character development, that wouldn't work if the characters were well written, right? So yeah, I feel like Scorpios will appreciate this one. It's there's so many intense moments too, and this is one of my top books as well. I feel like I'm only ever going to talk about my favorite books on here, but I promise you, Miracle Creek is really good. And especially for right now, if you're looking for a book to get lost in, this is it. I'm telling you. Every person I know that has read Miracle Creek has loved it. And the reason that I think Scorpios will love it is not only because it's a very smart book, but I feel like they'll really appreciate the various characters and all what we get to see about them, and it's really interesting. So Miracle Creek, guys, by Angie Kim. This one's for you, Scorpios. Okay, so that's my wrap up of my second part for book recommendations based off of astrological signs. Shockingly, this is a little hard because I was this, like, every time I like look into personality traits of different astrological signs, and if I don't know that many of them like really well, like my difficulty this time was Virgo, since I don't know that many except for my brother. I was like, I was like more of at a loss. So I'm hoping the next group I will do a little bit more work, I promise. But you know, I gave some really good recommendations, I promise. I don't try to like, because I'm so into astrology, I'm trying to do my best for this. So I really hope the ones I did recommend for everyone in this video, like, they work out. That would be awesome. I mean, they're all really great books, so it doesn't really matter if you're not a Scorpio or you're not a Leo. I feel like anyone can read these books, but I wanted to pick them based off of signs since it's funner that way. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. So yeah, bye.